welcome to the show today. Today I have Guenther Dobrauz on the show, and he is partner and he's the leader, huh? Leader. Ich habe immer mit dem Corporate-Titel, die gehen mir auf den Geist manchmal. Nochmal. Leader PwC Legal Switzerland. Das ist zu viel Li drin. Okay, gut. Also, dann machen wir das nochmal. Gut. All right. So, welcome to the show today. Today, I have Guenther Dobrauz on the show, and he's the leader at PwC Legal in Switzerland. He's also a partner at the company, and I'm very, very excited to dive into your story, hear a bit more about what makes you you, and hear more about your rockstar stories as well. So thank you so much, Guenther, for being here. Really appreciate it. Maybe let's dive right in. Can you share maybe one or two moments that along the way of your journey really shaped you as a human being, as a leader, as an entrepreneur?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I don't have this story, like with all of those biographies, when you have this one defining moment. And, especially since you mentioned rock stars, they usually end with those near-death experience kind of situations. I don't have that. I think it's looking backwards. It's more, and that's probably an important message, that things fall into place. So my career is really, if that's what you want to call it, a career that is, I've been doing a lot of different things, which in the end all added up and came together to allow me to do something new. But to be quite fair and honest, whilst you're on that journey until I got to where I am right now, it always felt like okay, why did I have to do that, and why didn't it work out, or did it go off in the wrong trajectory or whatever. You don't see that in the moment, and ultimately it all comes together, and there's all those different things I did which allowed me to do what I do today.
So it's basically about the collective experiences that you had, even though sometimes they didn't make sense in the moment, or it was kind of a weird thing that you were in maybe at that time. At the end, it all adds up, it all comes together, it all sort of like makes sense when you look back. That's only a very interesting one, just as the first piece. That's a big lesson, that's a big reflective moment there. I really like that. As we travel through life, there's always interesting people we meet along the way, almost like the Wizard of Oz story. So who are some of the people that you met along the way that really shaped you as a human being, as a leader?
Right. Well, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but clearly the most important figure was my father, who was an amazing man. He was, a super successful professional athlete, a super successful entrepreneur, self-made man, academic, and everything, which could have led to me needing a lot of psychology treatment for all of my life, because you have this huge shadow. But no, what he taught me is he basically had 10-year careers. So he did something 100% or 150% for 10 years, got to the top of it, and then did something radically new because he got bored of it, and did the same thing, and at the end he brought it all together. So that was quite inspiring. And he never put that sort of burden on me, because he said this one very important sentence early on. He said, you're my son, I love you, whatever you do, it's going to be fine, so there's no pressure whatsoever. That was very important. And, there's a lot of people today still coming to me, telling me stories about him. So he was a great inspiration. Then when I started as a lawyer, I started in a very prestigious, very big Austrian law firm. And again, there were two partners who were very important, and they taught me sort of the technical side of things. And one of them in particular also about leadership, how you interact in particular with this breed of people. And then I got the chance, and then sort of running sort of by very, very quickly to really meet some geniuses, I would say, when we started, when they started, and then brought me in one of the first Swiss tech venture funds. Great people like Professor Gerd Plasonic and the late great Professor Richard Artley, and the late great Professor Gordon Edge, who had built the Cambridge phenomenon and come from this disruption and innovation sphere. And so that was quite insightful. And the other element is I've always been obsessed with music. I always say, and I have a T-shirt that says, "So I'm a failed rock star." I always wanted to be a rock star, guitar, get the girls, stand on the stage, not necessarily in the order. And I know, but looking at the dynamic of the music industry, and how bands work, how they don't work, and sort of open playing in bands, meeting a lot of people. That taught me a lot on the positive and on the negative, and in particular those bands that made it, they usually have a special chemistry, and again that helps me a lot. So I could give you some names there as well, but it's all of those elements. But in all instances, it's more examples you've seen, experiences you've shared. But I've never, maybe with the exception of my father, had like this idol situation where I said that is that one figure. You meet a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with that, who say, oh, I don't know, Richard Branson is a name that often comes up, and he's great. I like him, but I never idolized in that sense anybody, because I don't want to be a cheap copy of Richard Branson, not even of my father. I want to be the best version of myself, and I just steal great ideas and incorporate them into my own ways, if I like them.
I love what you said. I don't want to be a cheap copy of somebody else. I want to be the best version of myself. I think that is another big one. That is very essential. As a person. But you can also look at it from a company perspective. Instead of becoming a cheap copy of Google, better be the best version of yourself as a company as well. And it's sort of like it applies everywhere. That's a really, really important one. And I mean,
maybe if you permit here, it's very true, because when I started out with shaping PwC Legal, and if you go on a webpage, and it's not meant to be a sales pitch, but to round off the story, it says we're building the law firm of the future. Now, I had a very clear version of what the law firm of the future looks like. So I deliberately started, and we're building the law firm of the future every day. So it means we don't even know what it is. We start every day anew. But I was very clear that I don't want to be another version of those great established law firms we have in Switzerland already. The Homburgers and Berlenkavers and NKFs, and they're all great. But if that's what I want to do, I could just go there. If they want to have me. But no, I mean, that's where I come from, right? I come from a classical law firm, and I said, no, I want to do something totally different. So, we were not, because otherwise I just have a gap of 150 years, which I need to catch up with, which is very, very difficult. You can't buy history, right? Well, you can, but it's not credible. And so I said, no. We look at what we believe is needed in the future, and we built this totally from scratch, and we're our own peer group. We're not even competing with them on their terrain. We define our own terrain. And as for the personality, again, everybody, I believe, goes through those phases of self-finding and self-definition. And obviously, growing up sort of fairy tale-like on a castle in Austria, if you like, on a country estate, you have to be rebellious, right? Because otherwise you just end up being, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of relatives and friends who do that, hunting deer and being happy looking in the sunset. But so I needed to rebel and find myself. I did a lot of the rebelling part, and go off and in other countries, and got too many tattoos and whatnot. So it's not that I was born with this thing, but I always sort of had to find my own way of doing it, and the end result is hopefully somewhere along the first steps towards the best version of myself.
I love that. It's a that rebellious thing obviously comes up in in the rock star personality, and all these kinds of things you're doing along the way. I want to stay on the topic of the legal firm of the future, because I have not met a lawyer who's also a rock star so far in my life. So that combination is, I don't know if it's unique or if I'm just not in that circle enough, but I'm very curious about what is it that excites you about maybe the industry of law, or about specifically building a law firm of the future. Like, what is it that drives you every day to get up, go out, make difficult choices, make difficult decisions, and just, deal with everything that comes along? What is it that gets you excited every day?
Well, there's two elements. First, one comment I'm a failed rock star, right? That's from the music side. I wanted to be another rock star. I wanted to be a musician, but it's very difficult if you do that from Switzerland or from Austria. But no, it's more about the dynamic and the thinking behind it. And I like my rock music. No, but what I like about A, the legal profession, and B, about building law firm of the future is two things. On the one hand, I really like being a lawyer. I'm a passionate lawyer, right? Because it allows me to work with people. And there's the one thing, which is the technical part, which is intellectually stimulating. And, and you always have a bit of a fight. And, you have opponents, you meet great people there. And, so I like that as a challenge, and in particular, the working with people and the solving of problems. So my job is really to solve problems for people, or to just come. And, mostly it's social engineering, right? When they come to a lawyer, they just want somebody, just in parentheses, to put the hand on the shoulder and say, it's all going to be good. And then you go home and you go, all right, let's make this happen. And so that's what, you get a lot of feedback. And, I just like to interact with people. I have a great team of more than 100 people by now around me. They all have different personalities with challenges, but so I think that's the one thing about working with the law. The other thing is the big theme in my life is innovation and disruption, right? That's what I've been doing as a venture capitalist. This is what I'm still doing as a private investor. This is what I've been publishing about. This is what I've been researching. And everybody always thinks about the next Google, the next Uber, the next whatever. But one of the industries most ripe for disruption is the legal industry. And by and large, the way lawyers work is not so much different from the way they've been doing it 100 years ago, right? I mean, you can't see that now. There's still the books there, but these days they're collecting a lot of dust. I'm just a bookworm, so I like books. But you do that, you bring into paper, you do it. And that clearly isn't the future. And it's clearly not what clients need. In a world that is becoming increasingly interconnected, that is becoming increasingly complex, with more and more dimensions coming together. But just answering the legal questions, you don't solve the problem. You need to usually cater to the other dimensions as well. And so it's an industry which is up against huge change, and that's something I love. It's being documented in my new book, which is coming out in 2019, which is going to be called New Suits: Appetite for Disruption in the Legal World. And we've got a great panel of writers, and basically we're looking at everything, the entire value chain of the legal world, starting from the education to research, documentation, to legal technology, which is coming in, even the players in the ecosystem, which are changing with, again, tech players, alternative legal service providers coming to the table and so forth. And it's driven by different factors: new technological capabilities, new need from clients, new challenges, new demands, and then the way the clients work, So it's just incredibly fascinating, and then just look at firms that have sprung up, like LegalZoom is one I like. Rob Shapiro is a hero of mine, right? Or what we've been doing, not to blow on trumpet, was building our flexible legal resources offering with a lot of technology in the background, with our automated legal documents. And it's just fascinating. So it's a chance to bring the two things together. And I believe the law firm of the future, as we see it, will heavily be built around technology capability, management capability, i.e. not providing answers, but delivering solutions. So already today, my team includes programmers, IT people, program managers, project managers, and lawyers, obviously. So we're doing a lot of that. And it needs a global reach, right? It's if you're operating today as a Swiss hidden champion company, you're global. And in today's world with the internet, I'm not even talking blockchain or any of that, you're global day one, right? You have a solution, technology, either it works or it doesn't, and if it works globally. So, in the old days, you were sort of having agents going country to country, but today, day one, you're in a global market, so you will face global questions. So you need also legal experts who can help you globally, and hence a network like PwC, which is the biggest one in the world, with, on the legal side, only presences in more than 90 countries. Obviously, that's great, but it's also challenging because you need to manage such a network and so forth. So it's a wonderful, exciting world out there for me right now.
Now, I love what you talked about in terms of the law firm in the future. I mean, your passion as well. One thing I got curious about is, so you got this group of fairly large organization, right? And there is a massive diversity in professions, backgrounds. I mean, just sitting, a lawyer next to a programmer is not everyday life, even not today, very often, right? So how are you able to make that work? So how are you able to have an organization that is very diverse, very, very broad in a sense, and be able to manage that diversity successfully?
I mean, diversity is one of the most important themes of PwC as such. I mean, it goes beyond technical skills. I mean, just in Switzerland, I think we have more than 80 nationalities in our firm, right? We have something like 4 generations almost of workforce coming together. And, when I look out there, over there is audit practice with auditors, there's tax people, there's consulting people, there's technology, there's strategy, and there's 2 ways of looking at it. This could be difficult and, butting heads. No, I come from the innovation sphere, and if I've learned something, then is innovation always comes from outside of the established industry, and by bringing together multidisciplinarity. If you put 3 lawyers in a room, what are you going to get? A nicer contract or a fight, right? But if you want to move forward, you need traction and friction. So, and the best way to do that is if you put different materials against each other. If you just have something with a smooth surface, which fits nicely together, then, try it in winter. You're just going to slip and, your tire's going to spin and you're just going to fall on your nose if you try to run. But if you put different components against each other, which rub against each other, then they might move off in a different trajectory. So innovation really happens usually at the intersection of bringing together different things, and that's incredibly exciting. So I try to do that every day. We have those coffee towers in the middle there. And usually you would expect that a partner of a firm is not too happy to see their people like I do right now, stand them there and having a coffee. But I actually love the fact that there is 2 guys from my team and a girl from strategy, and the other, I don't know, but she is probably from accounting, stand together because, first of all, they get new ideas, they hear a different viewpoint, and quite so often they come up with a new business idea or with a new solution for a problem of a client. And, it's the diversity, the different viewpoints, different skill sets. If you put them together, it's just great. But the challenge obviously is to manage it because there's different ways of thinking, of working and whatnot. So what you need is a very open feedback culture, a collaborative spirit. And I believe we're good at that. That's what brought me here first. We do this here in Swiss level, on a global network level, and with our clients. And I don't want to work in a silo. I don't want to do the same thing every day, like factory line stuff. I like to be out there at the edge and, take things to the edge and past it. And that's just more likely to happen if you put different people in a room.
Absolutely. I mean, I very much agree with, the diversity, also where innovation comes from. We're definitely on the same page. Just one thing I want to sort of understand a little bit better. I mean, one thing is the friction, right? That's created and that with diversity happens and creates a lot of interesting things. But if there's only friction, it's not guaranteed that there's something constructive or positive coming out of it. So how do you, is there something, or do you think that's just given by design that there's something good coming out of it? Or do you add something to the recipe? Do you add something as an ingredient, or how do you deal with that?
Well, it's not that I personally add it. And the emphasis is not on the friction. It's more on, sort of the buzz, if you like, in the air, sort of the electricity. But obviously culture is incredibly important, and behavior. And so there's a lot of tolerance needed. There's a lot of openness needed. But I think in our generation, or actually I'm old now, I got a 4 in my back now, finally. Never thought I would live that long, but anyway. I think with the younger generation, they have a different way of interacting, not trying to get into this digital native kind of thing, but still there's different values, different, I call it as the legacy of the Erasmus generation, those people who had the exchange, traveled, a lot more, which was a privilege. It's not that the previous generations didn't want to do that, they just didn't have the opportunity. So I think, again, I'm not trying to say it's the greatest place in the world. I mean, obviously there's many other great places out there, but I think especially for PwC, it's true. We really fully embrace and truly live beyond the posters and the wall, this collaborative spirit, this embracing, fostering diversity, and bring, and this is the job of the partners, if you like, a spirit and a behavior to the table, which is collaborative, which is open, which is respectful, and what is true internally is also true externally when interacting with clients, and that then allows to what could be friction and which could be problematic, to become fruitful. And my vision around that is, I come from a very international family, but I spent the formative years of my life in Austria. And there is one thing in Austria that is quite special, and that is the cafe house tradition, if you like, right? And I believe, especially when you look at the fin de siècle, turn of the century, where many great ideas were born, and not only in music and literature, which you're thinking about, but also in the technology sphere, psychology, philosophy, whatever. And usually it was by the coming together of different people, and those cafe houses served sort of as the platform for that. I always say waltz music could only have arisen in Vienna, because it's the bringing together of Slavic rhythms with German precision, if you like, right? So, and it's you need to have this forum. So I always try to have this kind of spirit when you go into. There's a difference, by the way. I don't want to put it down. I love Switzerland dearly. I'm 120% Swiss now, right? But it's when you go into a Swiss cafe house, you wait for the waiter to seat you somewhere, and then you sit alone on your table and you drink your coffee, and then when you go into an Austrian cafe house, then the head waiter just grabs you and puts you on a table, and you end up sitting next to somebody. And when I was younger, I met people there. I remember sitting in the cafe Landmann in Vienna, and he put me next to Jörg Haider, the Austrian politician, and I had nothing in common with this guy. He was not my political sort of world at all. And I was like, wow. And he, I had the most fascinating 2 hours of my life. I mean, when I walked away, I still didn't agree with anything he said, but by God, I mean, this guy was intense. He focused on you 100%, and he was so stringent in what he said. And I walked out, and I had only planned to take a quick coffee, and I was like, wow. Or I got to sit with professors from university, with artists from the Burgtheater next there, and every time I walked away was an incredible experience. So I tried to create this environment, which, by the way, this guy can't answer anything in one sentence, but that's the way it is. I found that also in Switzerland, there's an amazing company in Biel, Creaholic, which was founded by Elmar Mock, one of the Swatch inventors, and Marcel Eschlemann and other great guys. And they sort of have the same idea, guys from all, and girls from all different, well, I shouldn't call them girls and guys. I mean, they're very grown-up people. But, they bring them together from all walks of life and disciplines, and they solve problems that other people haven't even thought about. And one thing I remember from being there is they have those tables, round tables, where they, get together and drink coffee, and it's a round piece of paper that's lying on it, and you can scribble on it, or you can put the coffee cup there. There's stains on it, but I know from history some of the things they have invented were co-created in this environment. So it can happen everywhere. But this is the kind of spirit I'm trying to create here for my team and for our firm. But obviously, I'm just one of many contributors doing that here.
I mean, it's very powerful also, just like going into that environment or into work with this idea that, it's so essential for bringing those different groups together, and, not avoiding sort of like the friction or the conflict. I mean, that's also what you shared with this politician that you met in Vienna. And it's just like, sort of like, there's always something you can learn, either for yourself or about something or whatever. It's very interesting. I mean, if you had to point out sort of like one big lesson that you learned along the way of your journey, what would it be?
My plans are only there to humor God. So I've given up on making plans. And I said, looking backwards, it all looks great. But the reality is, whenever I did something, I did it with a lot of passion. And quite often, it sort of was a great run, but didn't go all the way, or something happened, something came in between. And then you fall into this, oh my God, and so from the outside, if you look at my CV, it looks like some really extreme career changes, lawyer, venture capitalist, hedge funds, consulting. But truth is, when one of the first consulting jobs I did, I couldn't have done without the experiences past. And they were looking for something very specific. There was maybe only 10 people in this country, or maybe 100 on the planet, who actually knew anything about it. So at the time when I had to stop one of those projects I was pursuing in a previous career, I was really not happy about that, because there was dreams and time and hopes invested in that. And I was really fighting with that fact. And a couple of years later, from a different angle, in a totally different situation, I was able to use that again. So I'm not somebody who's sort of believing in a bigger plan or anything like that, but I'm starting to believe that eventually, if you truly believe in something, if you do something, even if it doesn't work out in the moment, eventually it will all come together. So even with the negative things, I mean, I'm a chronically positivist. I'm always like seeing the upside of things and the potential in things rather than the problems. But I truly believe that everything you do with passion will eventually allow you to do something bigger with it down the road, even if at the very moment it doesn't work out. So just be open. And it's the great American philosopher Bon Jovi said, life's a journey, not a destination. Or was it Aerosmith? I always get it wrong between the two of them. No, nobody's an island. That's what Bon Jovi said, right? The other ones are Aerosmith's very famous group of philosophers from Boston. And it's true, it's life's a journey, not a destination, and the journey is the destination. And if you travel well, you will do well. But to quote the philosophers of Aerosmith once again, you have to learn to crawl before you learn to dance. So, learn the basics and sometimes be a bit humble, and eventually you will be able to put on a really good dance.
I mean, I love what you said in terms of the planning as well, or making plans and things like that. It just reminds me of, nature as well. And, when a tree grows, the tree could basically say, well, I'm just going to go straight up, that's the plan, and detail everything out, right? Well, but then maybe there's something that's in the way, or something, I don't know, some other tree is bigger and it's in the shade and everything, and, trees often also go like that, or they go like this or whatever, right? And it just reminds me of this journey of life as well. It's not really that much of a straight line that you can plan ahead. Predicting the future is very difficult, if not impossible, right? This is very, very powerful.
Two comments to that, if you permit. I don't know how much time it is, but it's I love trees, but again, my father told me an important lesson, and we have this beautiful old trees at my parents' country estate, and then we were sitting on the terrace one evening and then looking at one of those. It was actually two that were intertwined because there was some kind of fountain or a well rather underneath it, and we were looking at it, and he said, "Isn't it beautiful?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And he said, "Have you noticed before?" And I said, "No." He said, "That's the problem. You don't see a tree grow in your own garden. So sometimes what it means is you just have to get out of the garden. You have to leave the comfort zone, because you can do whatever you do, but sometimes people just won't appreciate it because they take you for granted. They see it every day. And sometimes, leave the garden and look at it from another perspective, and then you can grow." So there's a little tree reference.
I like it. Yeah, it's very true. I see it often, like, especially when I'm in a hurry or just like very caught up, I don't see things. And then my boy now is like, it's 1.5 years old. And, suddenly I go and focus on him, and he sees all these things, I mean, every single detail. He just notices. He's so aware. It's a very, very, it's a very good point that you make there. Sort of like the last thing I want to talk about is a little bit about leadership. I mean, you're in charge of an organization with, more than 100 people and very diverse group and, lots of things happening. So my question there really is like, how are you able to make things work and just go to work every day and still stay sane?
Mm-hmm. It's a big question. No, but my take on it is I'm not a big believer in leadership. I mean, if you just go to the root of the word, there's a lot of books out there, but the reality is we don't have a lot of history in leading big entities or bigger groups. More or less until the Industrial Revolution, we were just working in smaller groups, workshops, or whatever. And when the Industrial Revolution happened, all of a sudden those bigger companies came to life, and the model needed to be implemented to run them. And the only template we had for organizing big groups of people and to get them to do something in one direction were the army and the Roman Catholic Church. I'm not trying to comment on either, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily the best model for everything, shall we say. It's an efficient model for sure. But anyway, so and a lot of the structures and the leadership that we still, sort of encounter today is built on that legacy of what was built in the last, give or take, 200 years-ish, and that doesn't cut it anymore. Because we're up against a different reality and up against different values and different people. So yes, sometimes you have to make decisions and you have to lead in that sense, that you take responsibility. But I believe increasingly in the future, it comes down to inspiration. I don't believe that people will have structured careers in bigger organizations. There will always be big organizations, but like in the past. I believe we are moving more towards a situation where people will be liquid talent, if you like, deploying their skills globally. And in the old days, you couldn't do that. You were born in the village and you grew up there and you went to work in that factory there, or you were brought up to do like Daddy done, took over the shop, the law firm, whatever it was. Today, from the first second of your professional life, you can work globally, which is a challenge because it means the competition is global. You can't hide in this illusion of satisfactory underperformance anymore, where your competition is Hans Uli from the next valley and only him, right? And then, you payers are stronger than him. No, your competition sits in India, in Russia, in anywhere. And they're becoming increasingly interconnected. There will be more transparency around that. So my vision of it in the future is that it's more sort of everybody's their own entrepreneur built around their skills. And, they will come together, form centers of gravity, and it will be the job of the leaders to bring the best talent together to do amazing things. And so the job of the leader is to inspire, to be credible, to have values that people can connect to. And so I always say I'm a legal entrepreneur. I'm operating a platform here, and my main job is to win the best talent out there and to get them to work with me for a while, to walk a few miles of their life with me together and to do amazing things. And so my only job is find talent, inspire talent, enable talent, and retain talent for as long as I can. And not saying that this is the way to do it. It just works for me. And we have pretty good talent retention. People like it, and because we enable careers, we build careers around them. So I believe leadership is about that, and the other important element is trust. Right now, I'm a partner on more than 50 mandates. Now I'm good, but I'm not that good. You can't be you can't be doing 50 mandates in parallel. No. The way I do it is I have great people and I trust them. So, they run the majority of those projects. They have the ownership. And, I'm there for the critical discussions, for the input, for the guidance. But otherwise, they're grown people. They have great education. They don't need me to tell them how to write that sentence, how to do that bullet point. I don't even care where they work from, We work the job, not the hours. If they want to work from home, if it's more efficient, if the kid is sick, I don't care. In that sense, as long as they do it, and this basically frees the talent. So I think trust is another very important factor that basically requires you to know people a little bit. But I believe the other thing I am is very honest and very transparent, and that usually works both ways. So you know what you're getting, and then you find yourself, and it's not that there isn't butting heads sometimes, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with arguing, quarreling, fighting, even as long as afterwards you pop over to the bar and have a drink, and then you're friends again. It is professional, but this is the human part of it, and sort it out. So ultimately, it's about inspiring people, trusting people, and having a vision that brings talent together and allows them to grow.
Love it. Also revolving around this talent conversation. I think it's, even though maybe you don't like the term leadership, I think this is really what leadership is about. It's understanding that you're not really the one, is sort of like, doing everything, or, sort of like wrapping around your ego that, it's all about you and everything, but it's really about, supporting the others, supporting everybody else in the organization, and even in the marketplace, beyond the organization, because some people may not work with you directly, but they may work with you one day, or they may have worked with you yesterday, or they have another sort of like impact on the organization. It's a very powerful one. Now, the last question I have is a bit up in the clouds. So let's just imagine you're a magician now, and you got a magic wand in your hand, and you could wish for anything you wanted. So a bit of the genie thing. And so what is something that you would wish for that could multiply the impact that you have at least 10 times on your organization, on the work you do, on the world, or whatever you wish for?
Talent. It is coming down to that it's the rarest good. I could do 1,000 times what I'm doing if I had 1,000 more people, come to the table. So no, but that is sort of the sort of my own greed that inspiring that. No, but my real message these days is another one. I think we are at a very important point in time, and that is, on the one hand, as a generation, we have a great opportunity. It's very rare that in one generation you see two transformative technologies play out, and for us that is true, because we've seen the rise of the internet, which has changed everything, and now we are on the brink of seeing the rollout of blockchain technology, which will, in my book, be just as impactful. Now, and that's my personal view, that's not a PwC view, I think it's on our generation that with the internet, we probably haven't achieved what we could have achieved, because the end result is, I remember when in the 90s I was so inspired, I had this idea that it will make us a better people, bring us all together, everybody will have access to all information, we will all work together, which is partly true, right? But what we've achieved also is that more power is concentrated in fewer hands than ever, right? And that usually doesn't lead to the progress you could otherwise have for the people on the planet. And I'm not a social warrior or anything, but what I'm trying to say is, with blockchain, we get this chance again. So I hope we won't screw it up. And I shouldn't say screw it up, but I did. Anyway, so there's another generation out there. So I believe that it's everybody's duty to get their heads around this, the possibilities around that. And if I could, I would speak to another 100 people a day to show them the possibilities around that. And by the way, I'm not talking about the hype. I'm not talking about the crypto. I'm talking about the technology, what it can do, because the combination of the globalized interconnection with the decentralization of the blockchain, coupled with what I said before, with those liquid talents, basically, being entrepreneurs by themselves. This could give rise to so many more transformations and progress. That is just amazing. So if I could do one thing, then I would like to be able to think about it more, talk about it more, talk to more and more people about it more, and just inspire them to think about it and have sort of that pre.com bubble burst energy and positive attitude now in this sphere, hopefully not building up a bubble, but sort of get it back and get it right this time round, and then the future could be really, really bright. Unfortunately, it's going to kill half of the legal industry whilst it's at it, but this is why we're building the law firm of the future, right?
That's a very powerful wrap up. Great points. Thank you so much for diving into the story, the lessons learned, and all the great things along the way. I really appreciate it, Guenther. Thank you so much for being on the show. We're going to link below the video to some of the sources, to the company page, to your LinkedIn profile, so people can follow what you're up to and learn a bit more about what are the cool things that are happening, and of course also connect with you. So Guenther, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, and looking forward to many meaningful discussions. So you can put my LinkedIn there, you can put my Twitter there, my Instagram, my Facebook, my any channel. I love interacting with people. Just hit me up. Any questions you have, if you just want to have a coffee in that sort of cafe house style, or if you want to talk rock music, or if you want to play music, or if you have a legal question, but preferably the other things. So looking forward to meeting many of you down the road. Thank you.